that I don't like a weird screen. Okay, normal screen. Fantastic. Okay, hiya cousins. How you been? Okay. I was just noticing that in my, like how I take a completely normal photo for my thumbnail when I'm sitting here, and then 2 seconds into any broadcast, it's clear that I just turned completely into Pee Wee Herman and I'm a complete weirdo. But I look totally normal, so I don't know. Is anything happening? Is this going out? My screen, I think, is frozen. Well, anyways, I can't troubleshoot now. Welcome to the show. I'm glad to be away from my computer and in front of another device for a few minutes, which I talked about a little bit in my last episode. And I got a lot of things I want to cover in this one. So if I don't get to everything, I might double back in terms of the topic. And finish up on another occasion. I'm going to be doing a discussion about, ultimately, after I get through my topics of discussion, I'm going to be talking about what, like, you know, the evolution of, it's working. Thank you. Thanks, friend. It was clearly just my device, and now it's rolling too. It comes off all fuzzy though, so I don't know if I'm coming off fuzzy live or not or whatever. I don't have any control over that. That is the world we live in. But okay, so anyways, I'm going to be talking about, I teased this a little bit in some of my social media. I wanted to do a discussion about how the tastes of and trends in film have evolved from the beginning to the end, or I guess the end, Jesus, till now. Well, kind of, it feels like the end, doesn't it? Like a Freudian slip there. Maybe I know something that you don't. How what you know that how things have evolved, where musicals ultimately became modern day action movies, and how westerns ultimately became modern day horror movies. And I know that doesn't sound like it makes sense, but I can make it make sense for you. So that's what I want to get to. But there's a lot of contemporary news that I wanted to touch on first. A lot of things are going on. I tend to stray away from things that are going on in my own personal life when I talk here, because there's just so much to get to. I don't have time, and I'm not really into it. It's a chance to kind of get away from that. But there's been a lot going on. Some good news is, it's kind of like weird news. As many of you know already, if you've been keeping score at home, I have a film on YouTube called "Oh Buster, Where Art Thou?" It's a documentary about Buster Keaton. And I have written a follow-up book to that, which is called Another New World, and it's going to be out November 25th of this year. And I just released a bunch of artwork onto my Redbubble from the cover art, which is a painting that I did, and I have a few different versions of it, like the plain painting, a painting with a gold frame, the cover of the book, which I revealed a few weeks ago, and also the poster for "Oh Buster, Where Art Thou?" So all of that is available in my Redbubble shop. Redbubble is hard to navigate. I apologize for that. I have no control over that. I've asked them many times to fix things. They don't. So you just kind of have to do your best. I have an entire section dedicated to just Buster stuff, if that's what you're into. But I've got like 1,000 different pieces of art and design on there, and every piece of art or design is available on about 100 products. So you choose your product, if you want a hat, or you want a t-shirt, or you want a sticker. This stuff in all price ranges. It's very LGBTQIA plus friendly. I want everybody to know that, because there's a good range of sizes. I do understand that sizes in the clothing runs a little bit small, like, so if you're going to buy some dresses or tights or something like that, maybe keep that in mind. Anyways, all of that art now is available, but I released that earlier in the week, 2 days ago, and it kind of has an issue, I think, has arisen with it. I don't think it's on the level of controversy just yet, but this is a problem I've run into before with my paintings. I do a lot of different styles of artwork. I do psychedelia. I do designs to fit specific products in Redbubble. I do pretty much everything, but I also have, which I'm probably most known for, a magical realism style, which are portraits and paintings of things that look realistic. And a problem I'm running into again, as I just released it, is that I think people are mistaking the work for being edits of photos, or AI generated, and they absolutely are not either one. I have done edits in the past in different kind of, clip art types of things, like collage works and things like that. But these paintings, and all of my actual painting work, like, start from nothing and you come out as they are. It takes a minimum of 6 weeks. Like, sometimes 14-hour days for 6 weeks to get something done. I don't move quickly. I use a USB tablet and a stylus, and I paint. And it's no different than an actual painting, but people, it looks like, are mistaking it for not the real thing, and it absolutely is. So I put a lot of work into that stuff, a lot of effort. I haven't had that style for very long. I'm still learning, I'm still developing it. I talked about this a little bit on my social media today, and it's something that is an evolution. I've only been doing that particular style for about 6 years, and it's something that I want to keep learning to get better at. I want to keep practicing, but I really want the word out there in a time right now where AI is not coming, it's here. And AI is kind of a misleading title. It's not artificial intelligence, it's just computer models. And I've got some more information coming on that. But it's programs basically. But it's a problem. It is a big problem, because I feel like it's affecting my sales. Not only do my items get stolen all the time and other people selling them, that's another thing. If it's not coming from, if you want to buy something and it's not coming from Nicolette Abides, one word, no caps, that's my screen name on Redbubble, then it's counterfeit. And they don't have the right sizes, they don't have the right placements. So if you are not getting it from me, you are not getting the genuine article. You are getting a stolen item. Someone else is getting my money, which is really important right now, which I will get into. I know that if a lot of you are minding the news, and I hope that you are, not like, mainstream news, but like, good sources of news. We are right in the midst of a massive labor movement, which is fucking excellent, and I'm so thrilled, and I really hope something happens with this, because this is pretty much the largest labor movement that we've had in modern times. And right now, we've got the Writers Guild strike that was ongoing. SAG-AFTRA has joined them, and now we have the UPS drivers who have joined them. So it's going really well so far. But my focus right now is, I hope that all labor unions go on strike. Honestly, no one is being treated fairly. And you might think, well, like, what does AI in the film industry, television industry, have to do with any other company or any other industry? And what it has to do with it is that it's literally infecting every single possible industry that you can imagine, not just the creative ones. AI is a lot like the internet, right? It could be used for good or it could be used for bad, but primarily it's used for bad, and it's never actually used for its full potential and what it should be used for. AI should be keeping track of, people's bank accounts, and, and checking your spelling, and sending emails for you, and controlling robots in factories, not writing books and making art, people making money off of, keystrokes into a website. This is a much bigger problem than it seems like it is. We know that with the writers and the striking actors, that is part of the clause that they're dealing with, is that AI, that these companies are trying to use their images, their likenesses, their voices, their work, their written work, to train models, AI computer models, to do the work, the rendering, so that they don't get their actual pay. That means less pay during the day, in a work day, and that means less residuals. And then the residuals that they're already getting is next to nothing. And then they take all these things off the streamers after a while, so they don't have to pay them. So it is absolutely dirty, absolutely undercut. The UPS strike is a little bit different, but ultimately, AI is what is coming for all of our jobs. And you might think that I'm being dramatic, but I'm not. Correct. AI does not have the experience or the life experience or the ability to replicate the human experience. That's absolutely true. Comment just come in. but take me for example, okay? Like I said, I don't really get into my own stuff because I really don't have a lot of time. So if this ends up pushing off, my what I came here to talk about, my topic, my about the movies, then I'll circle back and finish again, because I don't really like these to go on for too long. A little over an hour is fine. Sometimes they've run about an hour and a half or so, and that's pushing it a little bit. I understand not wanting to sit and listen to one person talk for all that time, but I'm like, I need something different. I need to stop editing for my book. I'm editing photos right now to get and doing renderings and things, and I'm just steeped in it. And I just came off of a few weeks ago doing the final text edit and just living in that, and then I'm doing the final photographic scenario. So I've been out of it for a while. I get so single-minded. I just want to get it over with, and I'm also experiencing kind of an issue here with this, because let's double back here and say, like, okay, so how is AI coming for other people's jobs? And I will tell you how, because it came for mine. Those of you who already know me know that to pay the bills, I am a technical writer, writing technical stuff, things like that. I've been doing it for a very long time. And the company that I primarily contract with, initially, when I started to work for them, there was plenty of work. I was making a good wage, in contracting. It's not like I was not like a worker there. I was a contractor. And, years ago, before the AI had really taken off, that's what was happening. I was, good. And then they rebranded a couple of years ago with AI in their new title to specifically. And then periodically I would get sent like small tasks that said, hey, could you edit this for an American audience, because it was written, by somebody in India or something like that. And they say, could you edit this for an American audience and make it sound like it should be for, and then there might be, and then if you do a good enough job, we'll send you more and pay you. Okay, so I would be like, oh, that sounds cool. That'll only take me a little while, no big deal. I'm a professional editor as well. So I would think like, okay, I'll knock this out real quick. I'll send it back, and maybe they'll send me some of this different kind of work. And never happened. But every now and again I get one of those, and it makes you doubt yourself. Like, I know that the editing was correct. I'm an American. I know how we talk. I know what is expected of a technical paper or a technical brochure or something like this. And it finally, as years have gone on, the jobs have dried up and become less and less and less, until this year, which I have not received a single job. And not great, okay? Not great. And it became clear to me at this point that not only were they short staffing, they pretty much don't staff anymore at all, because all of the work that I and other writers that have been working for them all this time and doing models like that are doing edits like that, or doing the work that we were submitting, they were training AI models off of. So they don't have to hire writers anymore. And technical writing, you don't need life experience to, write technical stuff. So a machine can do that. And basically I've lost my source of income, main income, due to that happening, and it happened very fast. And the issue is, and I'm a remote worker. I've always been, way before the pandemic or anything like that. I work remotely. The company was an international company, so because I am also, since childhood, dealing with, I deal with the debilitating issues of a chronic illness. So it's not just like, oh, I'll just go grab some hours somewhere real quick. That's not a thing, right? So I had always relied on that to get me through. And the timing is really awful, considering I'm trying to finish this book right now. So that's how AI is coming for your job. That's the prime example. Maybe you don't work in a creative field, but that's even more vulnerable, so that's coming. It's coming for you, and it's coming for me, or it's already come for me. Plus, now that AI is copying art and learning and training off of art, people are buying fakes without realizing it. And I have talked before about that I have chosen to go through independent publishing rather than working with a corporation, because I hate corporations. That's why we got into this mess. I'm not willing to sell the rights to my book. I'm not willing to let other people fuck around with it, mess it up. I did not work for 13 goddamn years on this thing, in this movie, to allow somebody to just come in behind me and put a car chase through it. So I've decided to go independent publishing, where I would get primarily the majority of the royalties and retain complete control of the project and what you get. And but at the same time, these companies and other people are using AI models to flood the market with AI generated work, where they just copy, where they feed them information from other people's works, so that they then have a database that they can generate a story from. Doesn't matter if they're garbage, because you already bought it and they already have the money. And then they put a fake person's name on it who doesn't exist, and then you think you got somebody's story because an algorithm decided that these keywords fit the stuff that you look for, or you shop for, or you talk about online. It's all collusion. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's happening, and it's happening now. So it came from my primary source of income, and it's coming from my secondary source of income already, because people think that my art is fake. And it's become an issue for me, and I'm working as much as I can to transition into making all these other things that I do my primary income. But I'm pretty much don't know what's going to happen, and don't know where this is all going. So if we don't get into a situation, and even now, right now, if I use keywords, I'm being monitored. Everybody who puts out content on YouTube is being monitored by AI models. And if I use certain political buzzwords or certain, I don't know, unfactual terms, then I'm going to get flagged. I'm going to get, pushed down in searches. I won't be able to, come up in searches, things like this. And I've noticed if I've casually said certain words before, not like offensive things, but certain like political terms or something, then I get very few views on my videos. So after I record live here, then they go onto YouTube. So we're all being monitored. We're all feeding the machine. Every word we say, every move we make, everything we write down, everything we try to make, we're feeding the machine, and somebody is benefiting from it, and it's not us. And if we don't get into a situation soon where this stuff is regulated, federally regulated, and which I don't see happening, and we don't get, it's not going to stop. It's going to get more, and we're going to have more unemployment and more people struggling than even now, which is hard to fathom, and nobody listening and nobody helping, nobody meaning the words I don't want to say, people at the top. If we don't get into a situation where we get some kind of universal basic income for certain people under a certain earning bracket, and like $100,000 a year or something below that or something, I'm not an expert at it, I'm just saying. If we don't get into that situation, if we don't get into a universal health care situation, we already know that conditions in this country are absolutely shot. They're crumbling. It's, pretty much, the end of the empire here. This is the fall of Rome that we're living through right now. And it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And I don't want to sound conspiratorial, because I'm not. It's true. This is all true. You don't have to take my word for it. But I did want to bring all this up, and I wanted to show you specifically that if you, maybe you've been watching for a while. I've been doing this almost a year now. So maybe you've been watching for a while. Maybe you've been listening to what I've been talking about. You're excited for the book. You're a Buster fan, what have you. I am in jeopardy of not knowing what's going to happen next, and I am not the only one. This is affecting everyone, and who it's not affecting yet, it will. So bear that in mind. I don't want to scare people, but it's like it's already happening, so I hope that maybe I can warn you that if you think, well, my job is AI proof, it's not. It's absolutely not. Your income is not guaranteed. Your health care is tied to your job. It's not guaranteed. So if we don't get in a situation where, and we live in an era where this could easily be done, where it could easily, we know we don't have to work as many hours to get the same number or same amount of work done as somebody 40 years ago it took them all day to do, right? We have these shortcuts. We have the technology. We have the machines to do it. And like I said earlier, it's just like the internet. We could use it for good or we could use it for bad, and it mostly gets used for bad, and it never rises to the potential that it should. So where the machine learning and the AI should be used for, you know, medicine and technology and I don't know, in accordance with quantum computing and figuring out how to make people's lives easier and better, it's making our lives worse, and it's not going to stop. So on that happy note, I just want to say support the striking workers. If you are in a workplace where you can unionize, do it. Do it. I don't know why I said it that way, but do it. Organize a workplace. You can't be, they will try to bully you. They will try to stop you. They will threaten you with job loss. They will threaten you. They give you the, what, we're a family. Let's have a pizza party. Fuck that. Okay. Unionize your workplace. Talk to your coworkers. Talk about what you're earning. You know, don't let these people fool you. They're making money off of you, and then they're going to take your job anyway. So even more so if you're a politically active person, start talking to your representatives about UBI, Universal Basic Income, because of this, and universal health care at an accelerated rate, because the rug is going to get pulled out from under you faster than you can imagine. And that's a truth. That's a truth. And if we don't do something, it's going to get so much worse, and we're going to end up we're in a crisis now. We're in a housing crisis now. You know, we're in a housing crisis, we're in a food desert crisis, we're in an employment crisis, we're in an inflation crisis, we're, you know, in depression level economics. Yeah, cash is king, exactly. These people, these greedy ass people, these greedy people are, you know, the economic system that we live under, I'm not going to use the word, starts with a C, ends with an ism, only works if they can exploit labor to enrich a few people to hoard the resources. The earth is dying. People are dying unnecessarily. We're having the technology used against us. People are working to death. They got no health care. It's not going to get better unless it gets better, and it's not something to be hopeful about, because what assistance have we gotten to this point, right? From any leadership group, no one is planning for this. They're getting their palms greased to look the other way and let it happen. So a couple of years from now, when the bugs are worked out, you know, because we laugh about these pictures that come out and they have, like, you know, extra limbs and 6 fingers and their faces are smeared, real funny. Oh, AI, yeah, I'm real worried about it. You know, no, it in a couple of years, it's going to have all the bugs worked out. It's going to expand into every single industry worldwide, and we are approaching a crisis like we've never faced before, because we've never had this before. So that's really all I want to say about that right now. I might be able to elaborate more on it, you know, at a later date. This was really not what I intended for this episode, but I really felt like it needed to be said. And I wanted to let people know that, you know, okay, here's a personal story about what's going on, and how fast it can happen. Because it went from, this is a little bit strange, why aren't the contracts coming in like they had been, to no contracts coming in. And realizing that my work had been used to unemploy myself. It's like trading your replacement and then getting fired. And if you're thinking, oh, well, maybe you were just doing a bad job. I wasn't. I'm excellent at what I do. And I, you know, I'm going to try and find something like that again, hopefully. I don't know, or hopefully I won't have to, honestly. If, you know, my book goes over well, I want to make a, you know, a permanent thing of that, and try to support myself via art and writing. But again, like I said, those things are also completely in jeopardy. So that's totally up in the air. But I hope that people would want the real deal, would want authenticity, the human experience, not the fucking robot experience. So that's where I'm going to leave that for now. And we're going to go ahead and transition into what I'm talking about, but just make sure you're supporting these unions. I know that as a consumer, you think, oh, I want to do something. I'm not in these unions, but I want to do something to support them. Well, wait for information on that, because generally, they don't want you to, like, don't cancel your subscriptions to these asshole companies, right? Keep up the pressure on them, basically, like, keep them. I mean, I know it sounds like counterintuitive, but if the unions, if WGA, if SAG-AFTRA, if they want you to do something, they will tell you to do something as a consumer, because you got to keep up the pressure and the demand and say, well, we want this, we want you to do something. Don't just stand there and let them starve forever, which, by the way, is their plan. They have been quoted. These companies are getting together and have been quoted in saying that their plan was to let the strikes go on through Christmas so that people started losing their housing and any kind of source of income and any way to feed their families, et cetera, et cetera. So these companies, quite literally, are fucking Satan. Okay, so it is not about, David versus Goliath, the little guy wins. This is about banding together, uniting, unionizing your workplace. I wish that there was a union that I could join. I'd love to. I would. But if you can, do it. Do not let these people take further advantage of you. And we're going to have to stand with these groups of workers, and I hope more join them. For, if you look at the UPS workers, they're just trying to get air conditioning in their goddamn trucks. They're trying to get basic human conditions. We are being treated as slave labor in these days, while people are getting at the top. Just a few people comparatively are becoming multi-billionaires, and that is sickening and wrong. And it cannot stand, it cannot abide, it cannot be something yes, they cut the trees down, which was illegal, so tree law was violated there, to try to harass, they will try to harass the workers, they will try to harass the strikers, they will try to make it as hard on everybody as possible, but we need to look to these guys as our inspiration all around the world to say, no more, no more. We're coming up to a precipice here that things are going to get so bad so fast. We've got a little bit of leeway here that if these people aren't taken on, and the leadership of the country is never going to do anything because they're receiving payment not to. These companies are keeping them from doing it. For instance, if you file taxes through TurboTax, the government knows how much money you're making, right? They know how much money you make. And just like in other countries, you just kind of check a box on a postcard and send it back. Yep, I made this much money. Yep, this is how much I owe. Here, it's a huge ordeal with penalties and fines and potential, jail time if you have to guess and get it wrong or something. And the issue is like, because TurboTax pays legislators to keep it this way. Again, not conspiratorial. You can not take my word for it. Go look into these things. It's absolutely true. So I've already gone on longer about this than I intended to, but we are in a bad mess. And it just is something that everybody needs to be talking about. It needs to be in everybody's mouths. I really hope the young people that are entering the workforce here in the next, few years realize that there is no way to go except for unionizing and collaborating. Let me say it that way, because it's going to get worse, worse. Okay, I'm a millennial, and we know firsthand about wealth hoarding and job hoarding and being absolutely silenced. It's only just now, if you look around, there's like very few millennial age celebrities or spokespeople that aren't, inflammatory, crazy people that just get attention. But I mean, like, genuinely, the general article, because we have historically been a silenced generation. Nobody wants to hear from you. Nobody wants to know about you. Nobody gives a shit. Wham. We're the 2 generations ahead of us, 3 technically, still living, hoarded everything and took everything and scraped the earth down. So that's a whole other conversation. But let's forget about that for now. Let's do a little escapism, I think, is warranted here. And I'll probably go on about all of that again in my next few episodes, and probably every episode from here on out. We're going to spend a few minutes at the top of the show talking about unions and talking about workers' rights and talking about, you know, the progress of the strike and whatnot. And we'll see what happens. And I hope that that is some useful information for you, or at least some things to look into if you think that I'm full of shit. So, okay, so this episode, I wanted to talk about the evolution of trends in film. Not so much of like trends, but like people were into, like we stopped liking this and we started liking this, even though that is at the core of the discussion. But more in a more physical, literal manner about where they were and how they ended up here. In the beginning, well, as you know, in the beginning, the sound and color were technically present, but they weren't universal. There was no big, easy way to have either one or both. They were cost prohibitive, and it took a lot of years and a lot of really smart people and really, scientists basically to figure out some way to create a process of colorization and a process of sound to attach to literal physical celluloid film to make movies into the more modern idea of movies, move away from the sound or from the silent era, right? So just like that, there was an expansion forward of technology, because I talked about this a little bit in my last show. Photography has always been a kind of a bastard technology. The consumer desire for it, for personal photography reasons, and professional, were way outscoped the ability to do it at the time. You know, when things were just, you know, when the Luminaire brothers were starting to their film career, and then we had other people, starting to develop film cameras or just still cameras and such. One person, I will not mention his name because he's a bastard, but is credited with probably pretty much every modern technology. It starts with an E. When these things started to come about, they basically were like, hey, look at this neat thing I invented. What can we do with it? And that was really the whole concept. So people really jumped at the chance to have movies in whatever form or shape that they came, because they just really were enamored with the ability to watch a moving, image of people that looked like them or from somewhere else in the world or what have you. So the interest and the desire either to do it in a consumer level or consume media made at a professional level way outscoped any actual technology at the time. It took a long time for things to catch up, right? And we only now, like in the last 20-ish years, where we have camera phones that film in color and digital and all this and have real looking things, have really finally caught up. So when sound came in, which was around 1929, the most well-known introduction to sound film was The Jazz Singer, where it had musical numbers in it. It was otherwise before that it was a gimmick. Same with color. It was just cost prohibitive, and there was no universal way of doing it, so that there could be things that were like weird, ugly colors and not like true, real looking color, right? So, of course, it was looked at like a phenomena, like, oh, we're not going back. Like, people, of course, they loved their soundless film, like, they were used to it. They did not mind. It was good enough for them. But the industry saw it as a moneymaker, and people saw it as something that they wanted more of, right? So they were there for it. And as sound came in, then it became pretty obvious to these big magnate companies to say, well, what's the most obvious thing we could do with sound now that we've got it? Musicals, right? Okay, so they started including like all these song and dance numbers in movies, And because a lot of the people, primarily all of the people, let's just generalize here, came from vaudeville or burlesque or theater backgrounds, where they were doing this live since they were children, primarily. So you have people who could sing and could dance and could recite and could act and could be funny, and they could do and be dramatic. They could do all of these things. And you've also probably heard of a lot of stories about, and if you've seen Singing in the Rain, this is a really great even though it itself is a musical film, it really explains in a realistic way how people lost their careers when sound came in, because they had weird accents or foreign accents, which America's got a real good xenophobic streak going back a long way. So they didn't want to hear foreign accents, except for oddly, unless it was Latin. Like they loved the Latin lover, type of thing. That was always acceptable. So it's weird how trends picked and chose their racism back then. But I digress on that. But the point is the musicals were the most obvious way to get the asses in the seats. Yeah. So they did this, and then they push for color, and then we end up with a few years later, we start to end up with these first black and white musicals, which you saw a lot of Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers type stuff that really appealed to audiences. They loved the glitz and the glamour, plus the singing and the dancing. They could, and then we started coupling it with where I could go and buy this on an album type of a thing. It was not exactly albums as we know them today, a little different, but again, moving forward. I don't need to explain the difference between shellac and vinyl. They're just different, okay? So they started to make that connection, and you had Jeanette MacDonald was an opera singer, and she came in there, and they loved the opera singers, and so audiences didn't discern the way that we do now. They didn't have as many choices, so anything was good. Everybody enjoyed the musical, everybody enjoyed the melodrama, everybody enjoyed the operatic rendition. It was that kind of a thing, because it was just such a marvel. So fast forward a couple of years, and really not that many, and color finally gets the bugs worked out, and we end up in an era of the MGM musical, where they wanted to take everything to the next level, and really have all of the best stars and put them in. They were sort of the dream making factory. We had other studios, but they were at the time the most powerful and were most capable of making these extremely opulent visual spectacles. Think Wizard of Oz if you can't think of any other ones. That would draw in the most amount of people, because again, this is a consumer market. Like, you make a product to make money off of, and that's how they would do it. And so that becomes the most popular genre of film that there is, and not necessarily the most ubiquitous. I'll get to that a little bit more, but the most popular, I would say, because it would always draw people in, because it was the kind of thing where it's like you knew you were going to go in there and hear some good singing, see some good dancing, but you didn't know everything, and you felt like you were going to get a really good surprise. So audiences were super into it, and this persisted for decades. Musicals, whether it was like a musical that where every word is sung and it's really obnoxious, or just they have musical numbers, or there's just musical sequence, like bands playing around throughout the film, things like that. Anything goes, just like that. Or no, is that the one I'm thinking of? Oh, well, anyways. I don't have time to waste. Anyways, the point is this was the most popular, easy to enjoy genre that there was. Like, you didn't, remember, America is a melting pot, and always really has been. So in the big cities, this is why soundless film was, such a big hit. In the big cities, people didn't always speak English, right? They're immigrants, are coming from different places. And if the movie didn't have any sound and you're missing things, you could still understand what was going on, But if it's a musical, yeah, you don't need to catch every word to, be able to tap your toe and enjoy the dancing and the costumes and what have you. So it became really, really enjoyable genre. But the thing about them is that it wasn't, it wasn't what you would call an action movie, right? Action genre did not actually exist. So how did we go from the musical evolving into the action film, the modern action film, right? That seems kind of like apples to oranges. It actually isn't. Because in the time of the musicals, there were some very important factors that went into them, especially when MGM was in its heyday and was making the best of the musicals. And there's a lot of examples here, but I'm going to kind of stick to a few to make the point. I can't go on forever about everything. But the point is that they knew what worked. It was a good formula. They understood what they needed to do, who they needed to do it with, and they were always scouting for more talent and behind the camera and in front of it, and being the most technologically advanced before anybody else. So, like gigantic breath. As they were, making bank off of these kind of things, these were the most expensive and the most difficult products to produce, right? So, you took massive manpower. We're talking about, costumers and, yes, I'll get to that. Someone asked me, aren't Buster Keaton's movies considered action movies? And I'll get to that. Because the answer is no. But I'll explain here in a minute. Point is, they were the hardest to produce. They took the most manpower. Think about, like, in their time, it was basically like making the Lord of the Rings over and over and over again. The biggest, most expensive thing that had to keep outdoing itself over and over. So, it gets to the point where, behind the scenes, and because comes commonplace, like, they know they're going to have big dance sequences, and they've got dancers, but you can't just be like, okay, go dance. I mean, you could, but it's not going to necessarily, fit the thing or whatever. It's not freeform jazz here, that there's a plan. So choreography becomes a massive part of how these things are produced. And we're talking about people like Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly, and who were choreographers in their own right, and Hermes Pan, who worked with Fred, and Bob Fosse, and then the filmmakers like Vincent Minnelli and Busby Berkeley, who were pulling these things all together in these, to make a picture of it at the end. So there was this great big manpower that took all these moving parts, all these moving people, and planning, and that is how you can really compare that to the way that, think about the same thing with the Mission Impossible series or the Fast and the Furious series, which are considered action, because action movies did not have their own genre at first. That really arose in the 50s, kind of riding the wave of the French New Wave cinema, where people started to rebel, I guess, against traditional standards, and then we started getting the angry teenager movies from Britain and things like this, and then we started to get more what we would call traditional action, right? Which was rebelling against that old time standard of song and dance, something for everybody type of scenario, because they were trying to be like, well, my life is garbage. It's not some MGM musical. It's not like that. So this is like my gritty teen, stab somebody with a knife and rob them and run away and drive a truck into a ditch, type of shit. And then that all kind of transcended to American cinema. And there started to become a want of more action-packed events and things. So, but that doesn't mean there weren't movies before that had action. Of course, that was always there, but they were considered part of their bigger genres, right? We had gangster movies, we had swashbuckler movies, we had adventure movies, all the way through time of cinema. But they were considered, someone just said, well, Buster Keaton's movies, action movies. Yeah, all the silent pioneers. Keaton, to a lesser extent, but also Chaplin and Lloyd, they all did physical work that we would consider nowadays action-filled. If you look at Keaton's The General, it really does play like an action movie, full of stunts, full of action, and it's a war movie, right? Which also was, all the whole time. But that was considered a comedy, not an action movie, because the action genre did not exist. So even though there were all these like moments of action filled, hi buddy, my cat's in the door. He's got his head peeking in looking at me. You wanna come over? Yeah? Okay. So even though we had, you know, these moments of action, they were not their own genre yet. So as musicals went out, because reality kind of came in, let's see if he wants to say hi. Hi, buddy. So as music kind of, musicals fell out of favor, because people started to feel like, why does everybody know every word? These are stupid. My life's not like this. I can't relate to this anymore. And then the studios thought they were too expensive to produce anymore. People were not coming to see them in the way that they had before. There were now more types of movies, and the studios that couldn't afford to put on the big musicals were embracing these other genres of film, right? Like the more grittier, you know, dark and depressing type stuff, you know, the noirs, things like that, things that kind of had an edge to them. So when we get down a little further into time, and we've been through a few wars, and things are pretty shitty morale wise, through the, you know, it's in the 50s, and then as it picks up as we go on, but then we start to really actually see action emerge as its own standalone genre. And it's weird to think like that didn't exist before. It did not. But we really, oddly, you know, yes, we have the choreographers and the filmmakers to thank for that, for bringing that, you know, style of filmmaking where the heavy choreo and the meticulous planning and, you know, thinking of camera angles and such to make things look as physically impressive as possible. We also start to see the attitude shift kind of meet things in the middle, and people looking for something different. But weirdly, the people we have, you know, because if you look back, then, you know, you got your Douglas Fairbanks and your Errol Flynn's who were doing those kind of things. And if you've ever seen the movie Scaramouche, it has one of the most like well-known and up until Princess Bride sword fighting sequences and stuff. So it was there, but that was considered historical drama in every case of all their films as well. And then the Silent Pioneers were considered comedy, or at the very least dramedy. And so really the tide changes in a great way with these people who already knew their physical abilities and were very comfortable with them. So the most standout people who really kind of broke through with audiences and what they knew how to do were Gene Kelly and James Cagney. Now, Cagney was the everyman actor and the every talent, and pretty much I think if you really talk about who was like the greatest actor of all time, I think we really land there as him as number one, because he really could do everything. He had a very unique dancing style, but he, you know, most people, if you think of James Cagney, they may not even know he was a dancer. He could sing, because he's mostly known for his aggressive, action-filled kind of gangster type roles, right? Where, you know, he's always being aggressive and, you know, fast talking, and a lot of the whole "you dirty rat" thing is all, you know, that people talk about is all based on him. So he was really kind of the first crossover action hero, without there being, you know, a home for action film. Like he was the one that you wanted to see do those things, where at the same time he could just as easily go into a period piece or a comedy or a drama or a musical, and he could do everything. He really could, and he was incredible. And the other kind of side of that is Gene Kelly. And you'd think, well, Gene was just a dancer. No, Gene was a singer and an entertainer and an orator, and he was good at comedy and drama. He did movies where he did not dance or sing. But he was one of the first actors or performers, let's say, this is a little limiting to say actor with him, who was taking control of their, we got some James Cagney love going on, and rightly so. But he was, Gene Kelly was one of the first people to start wanting to direct their own films and choreograph their own films and star in their own films and really take control over things in a way that it was not really allowed back then. Like people, they thought of their actors, the studios thought of their actors as commodities and not as actual, useful anything. Go hit your mark, say your line, and get the fuck out of here. Like, and until, excuse me, I'm sorry, Pan's in here now, and he's got his little pan furs flying in my face. And I already got foundation up my nose today, so I know I was acting like a totally normal broadcast here. But Gene, in taking control over the things that he was doing, really opened up the ability to control the every aspect of production, and you see that in things like Singing in the Rain, like where he had a lot more creative control, and the musical numbers are just so fast paced and energetic. It's almost shocking, like, that people could do that kind of thing, and we really haven't seen anything since. And he also did things. And it had said he was inspired by Buster Keaton, which a lot of people were, because Buster was doing that kind of things. Because once they took the control out of the hands of the silent filmmakers who had their own studios and stuff, and decided that the new properties weren't going to do those kinds of things, Gene was really one of the first to come back around and say, no, I want more creative control. If you want me in this picture, then you're going to give me 2 more of my own, something like that. Or if you want me to do these 2, then I get 1 of my own. For better or for worse. Because some of his just don't land. Brigadoon didn't really work. They had no close-up shots, and the entire outdoor movie was filmed in the studio with fake flowers. And the pirate, I guess the studios weren't ass men. Because if you've seen the pirate, that's something to behold. But with the pirate and a lot of stuff that he was doing, he would be threatened. Do not do your own stunts. Do not jump off that roof. Do not roll down and fly across this thing on this rope. Do not do your own stunts. So they would watch him to make sure they'd have advocates on, spies and people watching production to make sure that he did not do his own stunts because he was too valuable. He was very popular. And then he would just figure out a way to, like, get other people to distract them or whatever, and he'd do it anyway. I can't remember exactly which film it was, but there's a scene that he was not supposed to do. It might have been in The Pirate, but there was a scene he's not supposed to do, and it did make the final cut, and it was like running over the scaffolding of an unfinished building, and he's just doing it. He's up in the air, he's leaping from, board to board, it's no safety nets, no harnesses, no, nothing like that. He just did it in the style of Buster, who had just done it, and that's where that kind of comes from. So he would just do things his own way. And then when people kind of responded to that stuff, when audiences were responding and people were finding out, hey, this is actually really fucking cool, we really like this combination of these action moments and the musicals, we really hit the stride of where the action movie got its start, and then it combined with the changing attitudes of the 50s and the new wave cinema and stuff like that. So we end up with, oddly, Gene Kelly and James Cagney being some of the first action heroes consistently. Not just, the Fairbanks Flynn stuff where they did it a little bit and there wasn't really anything there, but ultimately, and when you look at how this stuff actually influences things even further, there was a film called The Bandwagon with Fred Astaire in it, and he kind of does this gangster dance routine with Sid Charisse. And if you've ever seen it, I'm sure you have. If you've ever seen Smooth Criminal, the video, like the movie, like the short film of Michael Jackson, it emulates The Bandwagon, Fred and the Bandwagon. And that is really more, I mean, it's a musical, short film, but it is an action film, right? So Michael, inspired by what Fred had done in The Bandwagon as that character, the costumes are almost identical. The dancing is Michael's own, of course, but, that was his own invention. But, the song Dangerous also comes from a monologue in that Fred does in that, and which came a little later, but chronologically. But that was, things cross over directly, where musical crosses into action. And it's not just about what was happening in it, but just the nature of production. Because As musicals have fallen out of favor, of course, there's still musicals, just like back then there were action films under different names, under different genres. As musicals have fallen out of favor, we still have them here and there in musical films. I would say probably the 80s was the last real heyday for, it was sort of a dying genre at that point. People thought it was corny and dumb, and I'm right there with you. I don't love musicals. I like music in movies. I like when music is heavily featured in movies. Like a movie like I can't think of what's the damn Tom Berenger, the somethings. Why can't I think of it? I love this movie. Oh, well, it's about an imaginary band. Then the somethings. I can't think about it. I can't think of what it's called all of a sudden. It's escaping me. Anyways, it was like all about this fake band, the rise of this fake band, right? And then how they just kind of, the lead singer just mysteriously disappears himself and that kind of thing. Eddie and the Cruisers. That's it. Okay, and the music, no, not Shattered. Eddie and the Cruisers. But it's all about the way of a band coming of age in sort of the 50s, 60s era, and then getting really popular and stuff. And then the music was provided. Michael Pena played the Eddie, but he lip sunk the music to the. But anyway, point is that was a musical of the 80s that I really enjoyed, because I really like it more about like the integrated music than the everybody breaks out in a song style of musical. And I think that really resonated a lot with audiences, because they too liked the more integrated thing. And then when we were done with, it felt old hat, by that time. So yeah, we still occasionally get musicals. It's not, a couple years ago it was a West Side Story remake, and there was La La Land and all that and kind of stuff. So they do come up still, but they've really traded places in terms of what's popular and what was most liked. But they are handled production-wise very, very similarly. Had there not been these opulent musicals with the heavy choreo and the heavy consideration of cinematography to make sure things were captured from the right angles, to look as action-packed, and of course there was always kung fu and things like that. That kind of that brings in. And then Bruce Lee kind of bringing that into the American mainstream. That all kind of mitigated where, one went out, the soft stuff went out, and the hard stuff come in, basically, is a way to look at it. So when you look at today's modern action movies, and you look at the franchises, and you look at maybe not even the franchises, but just the way that things are handled, in terms of production, they really wouldn't have been born or evolved out of that without the musical, because that's where these production styles were learned how to do. That's where the cinematography to capture it correctly was learned. That's where, if somebody's moving super fast, there's a super fast fight scene, somebody's got to be able to film it properly, right? Car chase, think about the car chases in Bullet, you got to be able to film that stuff. New ways of filming, were developed, for that, and race car movies, various race car movies, racing movies, there were new advancements in camera technology to be able to capture that fast on film. So all of that came out of musicals, which you wouldn't think if you just say musical, action film is the old musical. That doesn't really make sense. But when you start to break it down, you realize this is something completely new and different. The case is also the same with where westerns, yesterday's western became today's horror movie. And it's not dissimilar in process, and it's not about taste, because obviously we still have westerns, but at a great lesser degree than used to be. And back then, obviously, there was horror, but at a great lesser degree than it, is now. And the reason for that is economical, actually. And it follows the same stylistic path of, obviously, audiences get into what they get into in different things at different times. But in the beginning of film, the very beginning, the easiest thing and the cheapest thing to make was a western. And it's really interesting if you look at actual western history versus movie western history, because movie westerns were the most ubiquitous style of film ever, and television and radio program. It was the most popular for decades and decades and decades, you know, generations. It was the most popular genre that there was. And part of the reason of that was because it could be made at any level and it still translated. Yet, in reality, we're really talking about a period of only about 20 years from the time that people came out west and realized, hey, if we round up a few of these horses and cattle, we got a ranch, because they roamed free. And to the point where we end up at the point where too many people came out, and then they all wanted to start to compete for land, and then we started getting into range wars. So you're really only talking about a 20-year period of actual history. So, you know, it has, you know, expanded. The movies have expanded that period, make you think that, like, it's still going on somewhere, you know, because it lasted for so long. It didn't. It was a very, very brief time in history. Even not the non-traditional westerns that might be about, like, gold mining or something else. Or horror movies that go in, you know, sci-fi movies in Western times. All of that comes out of just this 20-year period of the traditional Western idealism of cowboys rounding up, you know, doing roundups and droves and that kind of a thing. So there's that. But because initially when movies begun, that here in America, it was all done in the East Coast, New York, New Jersey. That's where the big studios were at the time. And then things were so crowded there, they didn't have these open spaces. They started to think about, like, well, how can we make more money, you know, effectively? What can we do that would allow us the freedoms to do more things to make more money? And they realized, which is hard to believe, because, you know, film is really only a little over 100 years old, right? And movies. And it's hard to imagine it any differently, but at that time, California and you know, from like Northern California to basically Mexico border, there was nothing there. There were oil fields and orange groves. There was literally nothing there. And it's hard to imagine that, because we think, like, well, we know we're a young country anyways, but it's hard to imagine, knowing what's there now and knowing it's the most populated place in, you know, the whole country. It's hard to imagine that being the case. But these studio heads, and they were independent studios primarily then. Like, they really weren't making these fortunes yet. We didn't really have Warner Brothers and MGM and stuff like that. They were all kind of different little factions, right? That kind of merged, died, went, you know, grew, you know, that kind of thing. One became another, all that. So, they were like, okay, well, let's go out west. So there was this great migration of these independent studios, and we're talking like Roscoe Arbuckle and with this comic, it's spelled with a Q. It's comic, but it's spelled with a Q, you know, for fanciness. You know, they have all these independent studios, and a lot of women filmmakers, by the way, which, you know, of course, got pushed out, elbowed out misogynistically. A lot of women writers, a lot of women filmmakers, a lot of women cinematographers, directors, all this kind of thing. They all moved out west. And they had all this land. It was just ranches and oil setups and orange groves, right? Watch Sherlock Jr. of Buster's. And he has certain car chase scenes. And you'll just see, like, passing, like, it's just like nothing, just orange groves, right? And you know that that's not like it is anymore. So when they got out to the west, they found out that there were all these ranches already in working ranches, right? Tons of them. And for the most part, that was the greatest industry out there, I guess, other than, like, maybe oil production, right? So but there weren't, you know, many people living there. It wasn't really a populated place to be. It was very, very vast and very, very empty. So they you know, you had mountainscapes, you had desertscapes, you had lushscapes, you had all these opportunities to do whatever you wanted to do in that intense and crazy California sun, right? That just shone like all day forever and lit up everything when there was no lidded photography or flash photography, especially at first. So they get out there and they find out, well, if we write a Western story, Hearts in the West is a good movie that demonstrates this. They get out there and say, like, okay, well, we go up to these ranchers and we say, you know, can we rent your horses? You got the gear for the horses already, you know, the riding gear. Can we rent your, have some cattle in the background and just kind of some of these abandoned buildings, whatever, and can we run around here for a couple days, shoot a movie, and to pay the rancher, right? And that just that exploded in popularity with people because it was something that could be done in shorts. It could be done in serials, like a very tiny little ongoing thing. It could be done in shows, it could be done a television show. It could be done on, when that came in, and future, like big budget feature films. It could all be done very easily, right there. It was all self-contained, and all you had to do is go pay somebody to use their shit. And it was very common, starting very early and lasting all the way, because the Western heyday really kind of died out in the 70s. Like, we kind of got to where they got really, really kind of twisted, and, you had spaghetti westerns coming in, which were, Italian directors coming and doing very traditionally American topics, which you don't necessarily want to get in the way of creative flow, but it's like, this is obviously not going to be true to the genre. So, you take it, you leave it, right? It depends on if you're really a traditionalist about westerns. And westerns are my favorite genre. I could go on about westerns forever, and I probably will at some point. But it was also everybody else's favorite genre from the time of beginning of movies up until about the early to mid 70s, where it just completely fell out of favor because, again, people thought this shit is old hat. I don't want to, I'm not into this anymore. I don't want to go play, cowboys in the yard anymore. I'm grown up. Life is hard. I don't like this stupid shit anymore. So that's really where westerns went. And we didn't see another really good western until Silverado in 1985, which was an homage to the traditional western. And again, my favorite western movie of all time. And we still don't really see it as much nowadays as we should, though it does seem to be kind of slowly creeping back into the zeitgeist. But for the most part, back then, it was such an interesting thing to be doing with film, because even though, like, these, if you watch old ones that are, from the 30s and the 40s, that they'll become from some teeny tiny little production company that you never hear of again. Anybody could basically go out there, and it was really the epitome of independent. Yes, Tombstone, but Tombstone came out in 1991 or 1993, and it was later. That was another kind of historical homage to traditional westerns. But in the early days, when people were moving their studios out there, you could be somebody who maybe you could just scrape up a little bit of money, go out there, rent some stuff off of a rancher, and buy a couple of cameras and make a small group of people, and then you had a production company that could maybe even specialize just in westerns, right? And in those days, from like the 30s, maybe before even, for sure, but I'm not for sure, but from the 30s, because of the ubiquity of it, from the 30s all the way up through the 70s with television shows, it was extremely common for actors to have their own costumes, hats made for themselves, Western outfits, a couple of changes, maybe Western outfits, and they would show up on these sets and be like, you come to stunt for, a while. What can you do? And then they get a day's worth of pay, right? It was like day laboring almost, but like making films. And so, very exciting. So, and they were very, a lot of the time it was so simple, such a simple formula. Daring, the hero and saves the woman, and they live happily ever after. They defeat the villains, they save whatever. And the genre even got up into modern times, where if you see, there's a set of serials called The Musketeers, but it's like Mesquite, and I love them, they're great. And those guys were always like saving the day, but it was like more modern. Like there would be cars, and people, like a bad guy would come into town and try to buy everybody's property or steal it or kill everybody to take it in, and they'd stop them, and this kind of a thing. So it was all these different facets of the way of doing things. And it was all these different facets of way of doing things. But it kind of just stayed within its own self, and sometimes it would be great big productions with great big stars, and lots of times, but primarily the market was filled with very low budget short films, that just really appealed to mostly young people and mostly children, I guess you would say, but everybody enjoyed a good Western, right? And it kind of gave me the good feeling. It's almost the way that people respond to like the Hallmark holiday movies these days. It's gonna, you know where it's gonna happen, right? But you know, if you're in the spirit, you enjoy it. So we say, okay, I said earlier, now that that Western genre has evolved into the horror genre that we know today. And how is that? Because it follows the same game plan. There are high-level horror movies, but primarily it's gone back. That's become the cheapest and easiest thing to produce, right? You barely need anybody to work on staff. You barely need any equipment, and it doesn't even have to be good equipment. What was that? I'm not into horror. I'm really not. I like scary, but I don't like gross out shit, so I'm not into horror. But what was that movie come out that was just that people liked? I'm so bad with movie titles. The Skinamarink, I think it was, and it's just like off, like it's dark inside of a house, and that's it. Like I think the premise is like all the doors and windows disappear or something, and it's all just dark, fuzzy darkness, right? Like you don't need a good camera for something like that. All you need is your story and a couple of pals, and you got a horror movie, right? And that's why that's how Westerns started, right? You get together a couple of guys and somebody to crank a camera, and it's off to the races. That's exactly what we see now in the horror genre, particularly as tech has really bridged the gap. And we know that there are even whole entire movies filmed on phones out there, so you could take maybe a couple, if you say you're a kid and you're interested in film, not even a film student or something, just a high school student, right? It's the summer, what are you going to do? You go grab you guys' phones, you write some little script out, and then you and your friends go out there and and you can edit it in the phone and everything, and put it on YouTube. There you go. You've made a movie. You're a filmmaker, right? So the appeal is there, and it was, other than the technological differences, it's really no different than what the Western genre was at the time. There could be high level, but primarily it's populated by independent filmmakers who either are really into the genre, which again, I'm not crazy about people making horror their personality. I don't love that. To each their own, but to me, I'm just like, no thanks, no thank you, no thank you. That's not for me. So maybe go look at something nice for a minute, right? So of course there was horror. You got the Universal monsters back in the day, and different types of things. But think about the zombie movie, right? All you need is just a few people running around. Think about Night of the Living Dead. That was an independent feature, and it told a much broader story of human tendency and racism ultimately. Did I say Night of the Living Dead? I meant Night of the Living Dead. I might have said Dawn of the Dead. I meant Night of the Living Dead, however. But point is, as we kind of wrap things up here, and I didn't get to everything I wanted to talk to, so I'll double back on this another time with some more of the stuff I wanted to get to. But those are two of the biggest examples of the migration of taste and technology, and lessons learned about how musicals evolved into again, I agree with the person, scary, not gore. That's what I'm into. I don't like body horror shit. I don't like gross out shit. And I mean, if it's funny, like Tucker and Dale, like I'm cool with that. But I don't like, close up grossness. I'm not gonna do it. I'm just not gonna do it. It's just not my thing. So, I don't like it that it's anybody's thing, to be honest. but I'm not gonna sit here and get all preachy about it, but because I'm behind that. I think that's great. I think it's like whatever genre people figured out where they don't need anything to make something, like that's great. I love the idea, and going back to what I talked about at the top of the show about taking away profits from the large companies, and putting it into the hands of independent producers and things like that. That's theoretically great. I mean, technically we really are just making more rich people if they're really good at it and they stick with it. That's where inevitably you end up or working for those great big production studios ultimately. The 15-year-old with the phones, ultimately, if he sticks with it, ends up directing for these companies. So it's kind of a shit fuck there. But the point of it is that we really are seeing things unfold in real time, where you don't need anything, just like the Westerns, where you didn't need anything that wasn't already there. You could just rent it and get some guys together. They'll ride the range. You don't even need a good story. You just need a little bit of stunt work, and people will eat it up. And that's exactly what we have with the horror movie today, with just the kind of a difference in resources and the difference in tones and tastes. I didn't get to everything I wanted to talk about. I went on a little bit long about unions and the strikes and such, and AI. But which I'm probably going to do pretty much every show from now on, because we're in a bad way. We're in a real bad way. And so I will go ahead and call it quits, and I'll double back on this again. I owe you guys another Bonanza episode pretty soon. So that'll be happening sometime. I'll have a new show. I didn't check the calendar, but I'll have another show at whatever the first Thursday of next month is. And that will be sort of what an update on the book, how all that's going, everything I'm doing, if any of this stuff has changed or gotten worse or better or whatever. But if you're in the market, check out my artwork. That'd be real helpful right now. So check out my my artwork on Redbubble. Like if you're gonna buy some clothes or something, anyways, or maybe some back to school stuff or whatever, even if it's not mine, go to Redbubble. And the artists only get 20% of the take, but we get something, right? So go to Redbubble, get something nobody else has, right? And you're going to pay the same prices as in the stores. So go to there, you want a new tote bag, you want a new gym bag, you want a new t-shirt, you want a new hat. You could find something you like. You keyword what you like, or go to somebody's shop directly, and they are very hard to navigate, and please don't give up. Just keep scrolling is the best thing I could say for you. But if you're into whoever you're into, just go type it in, see what you find, or follow somebody's direct link. If not me, someone else, because they will be very, very grateful, especially as things are, I'm not the only one being affected by things like this. So, but for, all your needs are there. They got books and stationery and bed sets and wall art and all kinds of things. And like I said, I just put a bunch of new Buster stuff in my shop. It is not AI, it's real. So go and check that out. Again, the book comes out November 25th. I'm still working on it. I'm going to go back to working on it after I leave here. And I'll have a new show for you at the top of the month. And some updates, hopefully good updates about what's going on. And we'll revisit this topic again sometime soon. But I'm starting to run long, and I think I need to move it. So everybody take care. Remember, if you're looking for fun, not germ-spready things to do, go check out your local drive-in theaters. They always need your support, and there's usually a good one in every city or close by. Don't do fireworks because they're annoying as hell and 4th of July is over. And be safe, be helpful. If you are somebody with some means, matter of means, maybe purchase some drinks or food and have it sent to some of the striking workers. Organize your workplace for unions. Don't be intimidated. Bosses are dicks and they're going to try to stop you. So that's all I have for you right now, and we will meet again soon. So take care, everybody. Bye-bye.